Well, hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Rediscovering Your Passion and Purpose with Patty. And I am Patty Stuhlin. I am the Chief Pathfinder of Pathways with Patty. And as we have begun this new year of 2024, my guests just continue to bring us enlightenment, joy, hope, motivation, and inspiration. And today, my guest is no exception to that rule. This week, my guest is Nicole Starbuck. She is a psychic empath, quantum energy healer, spiritual mentor, and life coach, empowering people to ignite their intuition and supercharge their psychic skills so they can make their dreams a reality. Well, Nicole, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and for that beautiful introduction. Such an honor and privilege to be here.
So, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Excellent. Well, I would love for you to be able to tell our audience how you discovered your passion and purpose, or whether or not you would consider it to be a rediscovering of your passion and purpose by telling our audience your story and maybe some of the challenges and obstacles and things throughout your life that you have experienced to bring you with us here today.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. So, to start this story, I actually need to go back way to the beginning of when I first discovered my spiritual gift and ability, which is psychic intuition. And I believe every single one of us is psychic. It's just that over time and through social conditioning, we lose touch with that. But I realized this for myself when I was 9 years old. I was
Wow.
coming out of school to get picked up, and just out of nowhere, I had this random thought, a bird's gonna poop on me right now. And I kid you not, it did. Like a couple seconds later, it landed right here on my arm. And I remember looking down thinking, oh my gosh, this is so gross. And also, I can't believe I just predicted this. And I I go to the bathroom to wash it off. I get in the car and I'm just kind of keeping this to myself because I grew up in a very conservative religious household where these kinds of things weren't really talked about, and they were. And when they
Mhm.
were, it was in a lot of mysticism and concern. It was demonized in a way, and it was thought that these kinds of
Mm.
things were evil. And so I didn't want that for myself. And so
Mhm.
I kept it to myself, but that didn't stop what was coming through from coming through. I was
Mhm.
getting a lot of predictive dreams and premonitions and visions, and then
Wow.
they would actually happen. And so imagine being 9 years old, having this happening, and I
Oh.
just kept it to myself. I ended up having a lot of anxiety because I would have these visions and they would come true. I felt like I couldn't control what was happening to me. I couldn't control the outcomes that I was seeing. This led to a lot of depression because I wasn't living in alignment with my authentic truth. I didn't feel like I had the safe space to really develop my skills in a supportive way. And I just like kept pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down. And I
Mhm.
thought that I was doing everything right, go to school, get good grades, get a good job, and everything's going to be fine. It's like the
Mhm.
American dream.
Mhm.
And it was not fine. I ended up in the ER with a panic attack, and they were really pushing for psychiatric medication for the anxiety and depression. I also had at that time a lot of chronic illness. So I
Mm.
believe that symptoms are warning signs for our bodies, telling us to slow down or stop, but I wasn't
Mhm.
listening. So I had a lot of
Mhm.
disease or dis-ease
Oh,
in
that's
my body. Yeah.
wow.
And this was really the first wake up call that something needed to shift. And I actually quit my job, my good paying job with good benefits, quit my job, took a lower paying job, and started on this personal growth journey of mindset work, affirmations, got my mind right, got my body right. Because in this process, I had also developed an eating disorder known as orthorexia, which is ironically an unhealthy obsession with eating healthy. I didn't know that was a thing
Mm.
until I
Wow.
experienced it. Yeah, because it's all this control issues, right? Like you feel so out of control in your life, you're looking for any little thing that you can to control. And so for me, that was my eating.
Can I
And
can I ask you can I ask you
yeah,
something real quick?
yeah.
Up to this point, from 9 years old until you're an adult, were you able to do any kind of research, or had you heard anything about psychic abilities or intuitions, or any of that? Or did you have the
No.
opportunity, or look into what any of that was, or what any of that meant?
No, I was not. I wasn't even allowed to read Harry Potter growing up.
Okay.
When we
Okay.
would do even like Halloween activities or anything like that, I had to go sit in the back of the class and do something else. I was not permitted to participate in
Okay.
anything remotely what my parents would describe as witchy, right?
So,
Which would
so even going into adulthood, you still do not understand what these visions or premonitions or any of this stuff is, or what it's about, correct?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I was just
Wow.
like, oh, I see things and they happen, and now I'm scared because I can't change what's happening, but it's happening anyway. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot up through my 20s. So when this first awakening happened of waking up in the ER with after having a panic attack, that was my first sign something needed to shift. And I thought, and it helped. Mindset, personal growth development helped. But as the years went on, so that was my early 20s. As the years went on, I got to be in my later 20s, and I realized I was still missing that. I was still
Mm-hmm.
missing the whole psychic intuition. I was still missing my soul, my spirit, and I got to be in a very, very dark place.
Mm.
It got to be that I was in so much physical and emotional pain. I did not want to get out of bed in the morning. Everything hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Everything hurt. My eyeballs hurt, my ears hurt, like my nose, like all my joints and my bones and everything hurt. And I remember this so clearly. I remember being in the shower thinking, God, I just wanted to stop. I just wanted to stop. Like I just want to give up. And it was like this voice came in. I heard it. It's like this voice came in and it said, don't stop. There's purpose in the pain. Keep going.
Mm.
And like just talking about it makes me want to cry because it's like I knew in that moment that everything that I was going through was to help other people through that same or similar situation.
Now,
That there
did you
were
know or think at that time that this was a higher source that was talking to you?
not at the time, but now I do. It's just like it just felt like a voice. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Okay.
it's like the voice of God. So I guess maybe in a way I did, but now I'm
Uh-huh.
seeing
Right, right, right.
maybe it was like my higher self time traveling and coming back and telling me.
Okay.
But no, I just knew. And so I started resonating with anything with the word soul. Anything
Oh,
with the word soul, I wanted to be a part of it. So I joined
oh,
a Facebook group called Visionary Soul. They were hosting a retreat in Sedona called Soul on Fire. If
oh my God.
anyone, no one's ever been to Sedona, I'd highly, highly recommend it. Just like stepping into Sedona, it's a whole other vibe. So I go to this retreat and I'm just like minding my own business. I'm like, oh, I'm a like life coach, whatever, like just like right. And so this woman, one of the facilitators, is doing something called light language on one of the gals. If anyone's not familiar with light language, it's you may have heard it called speaking in tongues, but it can actually come through as spoken word, as sung song. It can be through motions with the hands. It can be written down, like it looks like little scribbles, but it's actually
Okay.
little symbols. So she's doing this light language with her hands and she's doing these motions on this girl's back and she's recalibrating her energy system. I don't really understand it at the time. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, do me, do me. Like, I don't know what I'm I don't know what I'm stepping into. And so she goes, it's my turn, and she's doing this light language on me. She's working on my back. And just out of nowhere, she goes, oh, you're psychic. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, how did you know? This is my secret. Like, I don't tell anybody this. Like, oh, it's just like, actually, this is what you're supposed to be doing in the world. And I was so scared. Like, I was
Oh, yes.
so scared. And she helped me through light language and some other modalities, helped me to shift and clear the resistance I'd created around even saying the word psychic. Because for me, growing up, that was like a bad word. That was evil. Like that was like
Mm-hmm.
you just didn't do that.
So while
And
she's doing this light language, do you physically feel a difference?
I could see it. It was kind of like in my mind's eye, it looked like like a web or a tapestry, or like in technical terms a sort of like computer hardware,
Mm-hmm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
actual computer parts. And when she was going in it, I could see like the things shifting and unlocking. It was like she was recoding me, like using locks and keys to shift and realign
Oh my
and open me
goodness.
up to my purpose, which is like, oh, you're psychic and also you're supposed to be doing this in the world.
Wow.
And so I was terrified because growing up, I was told this was not, this was not a thing. We don't do this.
Mm-hmm.
My husband, who had been married with, at that time, it had been 10 years, like he didn't know this was a thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I just went all in. I just went all in. I changed my handle to Psychic Starbuck on social media. I like bought a book on psychic intuition. I read that cover to cover several times. I started offering professional psychic readings to practice my skills. I used to offer readings for $1, believe it or not. I got trained and certified in some different healing modalities like guided meditation, hypnosis, quantum energy healing, Reiki, light language. Not that like you can't get certified in like, because it's just that you just do it.
Right.
But
Right. Right.
I studied some different things and I started offering that professionally as well. And then I realized that this all wanted to come into my life coaching. I started out as a life coach, turned into a holistic self-care coach, and then it turned into spiritual coaching. So it all came together. And between my coaching practice and my psychic readings, I realized that many of the people that were coming to me were also highly sensitive, highly empathic. They just hadn't realized it yet. They were exactly
Mm.
where I was a few years before, of not fully tapping into their empathic abilities. But what was happening was, if we understand, like as an empath, it's kind of like we're sponges. And
Mm-hmm.
if we're a sponge and we walk into a room and say it's like a smoky bar and there's lots of drinking and smoking and all these, like everyone has their own energy, their own vibration, you walk out of that bar, you're still holding on to all that.
Mm.
And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not shifting and clearing that, it's going to find somewhere in your body to stick onto. And this is how we end up with pain and
Right.
fatigue and chronic illness. It's not actually our
Right.
energy.
Okay.
And so I thought, oh, like rather than addressing the symptoms, which is like, oh, I'm like, pretend I'm psychic and I don't know that I'm psychic and I want this psychic reading for confirmation for something that I already actually know the answer to. It's like, okay, instead of just doing that and treating the symptom, why don't we actually address the root cause, which is, hey, you're also very psychic. Let's help you develop your psychic skills. So now that's what I
Oh.
do. Is I still do offer readings upon request, but my main primary focus is showing other emerging empaths how to ignite their intuition and sharpen their psychic skills so that they can trust themselves.
So, I know myself, I don't have this a lot, but as long as I can remember, I will have a dream. And when I wake up in the morning, I don't remember the dream. However, sometime in the future, all of a sudden, I will realize that I am either doing something or having a conversation with somebody, and I will immediately remember that I had a dream about me being in that particular situation or doing whatever that was. Is that some type of psychic, what, I don't know what term to use for it.
Yes, yes. Psychic phenomenon is the way to describe it, or psychic thing could be used to. Absolutely, yes. And I get this question a lot. And the reason why it can come through in the dreams and not necessarily in waking life is that in waking life, it's so easy for us for the left brain to kick in, the logical part of us that wants to
Mm-hmm.
rationalize, and it'll dismiss it.
Mm.
And so in the dreams, that part of the brain shuts off. We are very much in this calm, relaxed state where when something comes through, we're more accepting of it.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Um, can you tell our audience, because I know that the term is used a lot, but could you please explain what empathic means, or if somebody has that ability, what does that exactly mean?
Yes, I'm actually going to back up and start with psychic to like
Perfect.
demystify that. So, psychic is an umbrella term for anyone and anything that experiences energy. And energy is all around us, it's in us, it's moving through this. It's what some people would call like vibration or frequency. It's that sort of atoms all around
Mm-hmm.
us, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so when we understand that, now everyone experiences energy. Like if you're living and breathing, you're experiencing energy, you're breathing air, you're drinking water, you're eating food, you are in fact psychic. Now there are different flavors of that, one of which is an empath. So an empath is somebody that's not just going to understand someone's feelings, but also feel the feelings. And I
Mm-hmm.
liken empath to, if we understand the clairs, so most people are familiar with clairvoyance, right? Clear
Mm-hmm.
seeing.
Mm-hmm.
You may also be familiar with clairaudience, which is clear hearing. We also have um, claircognizance, which is clear knowing. Clairsentience is clear feeling. So clairsentience is the ability to feel what other people are feeling. So I actually call
Mm-hmm.
myself a psychic empath to differentiate myself from one of the other flavors, which is a psychic medium. So
Got
many
it.
people hear the word psychic, they automatically assume, oh, that person talks to ghosts. They can probably, but not necessarily. So it's kind of like this idea of um, all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. So
Okay.
all mediums are psychics, not all psychics are mediums. So a medium is someone that communicates specifically with disembodied spirits, or what some people would call ghosts or deceased loved ones. And so an empath will process energy primarily through the body and feeling what other people are feeling and using their body as a sort of divination tool, or like some people use pendulum and tarot. It's using the empath of being an empath is using the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so we also have something called a channel, where you're just receiving messages, not necessarily from ghosts or disembodied spirits, but any spirit,
Mm-hmm.
angels, ancestors, ascended masters, power animals. What else do we have? I'm probably forgetting something, but anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it could also be, deceased loved ones or a ghost, but there's lots and lots of other energies and entities. And I think that's one of the things that scares people about psychics is, or the psychic realm, is they automatically assume they're going to open themselves up to, say, like evil or dark spirits. That's not
Okay.
necessarily the case. And if you are understanding how to protect your energy and set intentions, you're only ever going to connect in with whatever's for your greatest good or highest potential. We're not going to attract anything that's going to lead us down a path that's not for our greatest good. And so we have that channeling ability. And then taking this a step further, if you are channeling and then also sharing those messages in some way, this is where we get the oracle. So an oracle is somebody that doesn't just receive the messages, that actually shares them in some way. And so now, with online presence being such a big thing and social media being so prevalent, we have a lot of online oracles, such as
Mm.
myself showing up on a podcast, is being able to share messages in some sort of form.
Wow. It's so interesting you talking about this, because I believe that for myself, but I didn't really start figuring out until probably the last year or two. I believe my whole life I have been an empath, because how you just described that, um, I just had an aha moment. In fact, my eyes started tearing up just a moment ago because of that aha moment. Because as I told you before we got started, I've been kind of melancholy the last couple of days. And I really truly believe it's because I have several very close friends and family members that have either experienced a death in the family, or I have a relative that is in hospice that it probably will not live out the rest of the month. And I have several other friends that are suffering from a life-threatening disease. I believe that I've taken on so much of that. Is that part of being an empath?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And bringing our awareness to that is actually a really, really important step in shifting and clearing that, so that we're not internalizing it.
Okay. Well,
So
that,
when you start to feel the feels and it doesn't feel like yourself, it's like, ooh,
yeah,
is this actually mine? That's a great question. Is this actually mine? And
right.
you've just identified it's not. And it's like, okay, is there something I'm supposed to see or hear or feel or experience or know? Is there something that spirit's calling me to take away from this? And if yes,
Hmm.
tuning into that and feeling what that is for you. Is there some sort of message? And if not, then what feels really good for you to shift that away? Maybe that is talking it out like we're talking it out right now. Maybe that's journaling, maybe that's meditating, maybe that's taking a shower, maybe that's going for a walk, maybe that's dance or movement, yoga. Like,
Mm-hmm.
start tuning into what am I actually feeling called to step into, and then what's the message here, and when is it time to shift that?
Okay, well, you just answered my next question is, okay, now that I feel like I'm identifying what's creating the melancholy, what do I do? And you just said exactly what I need to do. And my number one go-to is always to go for a walk. For
Yeah.
some reason, that helps me more than anything.
I love that.
Wow. Wow, that's quite the aha moment for me. Thank you so much for that. I mean, wow, that's very, very enlightening. So, does your family, or have you shared with your family, um, your story about knowing since you were 9 years old that you've had this ability, or is that something that you know because of your religious background that you haven't shared that, or it's not something that you talk about?
Yeah, I have shared it. There was a couple of instances where I came out of the broom closet unexpectedly. And it's kind of turned into one of those things like don't ask, don't tell.
Mm-hmm.
They don't ask me about it and I don't tell
Mm-hmm.
them about it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of playing with that energy because on the one hand, it's like I don't feel that I need to make other people comfortable, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also not something that I have to like throw in people's faces and flaunt. But I'm an open book. So if anyone ever has any questions, wants to find out more, I'm happy to share. So the two instances that have happened are one, as I was going through this spiritual reawakening where I reactivated my psychic gifts and started offering professional psychic readings, things in my relationship with my husband were taking a turn that I actually stepped away. I left the house and went to go live with my mom for a couple of months as I gained clarity and felt into what was still in alignment for me. And while I was there, I didn't even think about it because it wasn't a thing to me, but I had set my tarot cards out on the bookshelf in the room that I was staying in. And I guess she was vacuuming or something. She came into the room, she happened to see them. And she asked me about it, and she was very deeply concerned because in her mind, this is like
Mm-hmm.
the
Devil
gateway.
worshiping or something.
Yes, exactly. Like this is
Yes.
evil, this is satanic. And I'm like, actually, mom, these are just a visual representation of what you already know to be true. They're just a tool. And actually, I don't even need them because I've had this gift. I call it, yeah, I have to switch my terminology and change it to things that she'll understand. So in the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
it's called the gift of prophecy. So that I have the gift of prophecy. I've had it since I was 9 years old, and I have these dreams and visions and premonitions, and also they come true. And I'm exploring how to develop that in a way that's safe. And I found that sometimes the tarot or the pendulum helps me to discern when I'm kind of like too emotionally involved in something to get a clear answer. But I'm getting to the point where I don't need them anymore. And actually, I haven't touched my tarot cards in months now because I just I use my
Mm-hmm.
body as a pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the conversation with her. But I mean, it's coming up even recently, and this was years ago already, but it's coming up recently where she's actually living with us right now. So she sold her home. She's here in Houston where we live, and she's living with us. And I had received a package from a friend. I had ordered a little kit to do a ritual, and it said Witchy Retreat on it, which is the name of my friend's business who sent me the package. And my mom checked the mail. And she
Mm-hmm.
goes, she's like, I wasn't trying to pry, but like I just happened to see this witchy. Like, are you into witchcraft? And I'm like,
Oh.
oh, mom, like, first of all, like, we need to define what you think witchcraft is because it's not what I actually practice. And I said, also, and I like didn't want to like, she was asking me
Mm-hmm.
like as I had to like go get the baby, and I was like, I said, mom, like, sometimes I light a candle and set an intention. Like, if you think that's witchcraft, I don't know what to tell you, but
Mm-hmm.
that's the extent of what I
Mm-hmm.
do. And she's like, okay, but I'm concerned. And I'm like, you don't need to be concerned. You're okay. So that was the conversation with her. And then with my husband, so when I had stepped away, I was gone for 2 months. This was right at the end of 2019, stepping into 2020. So I felt that something was coming. It was actually the reason why we had sold our house in 2019. I just had this feeling. I said, something really bad's going to happen in early 2020. And I don't know what it is, but
Mm-hmm.
I just feel it. I was like, we need to sell our house. And then I go to live with my mom, and it gets to be February 2020. And like, we all know what's coming, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
could feel it. And I was actually about to like sign divorce papers. Like I had already contacted the lawyer, had already filled them out, was about to like send them with the courier. And Spirit came in. It was very clear. Spirit came in and was like, can you honestly say that you did everything in your power to make this relationship work?
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, like,
Excuse me?
why you gotta be right? Like, why do you gotta be right? And I was like, I was so ready. I was so ready to let it go. I was so ready. And my husband was actually traveling because as we're taking a break, he's off in South America figuring things out for himself. He had also let it go.
Mm.
And I had to call him on like WhatsApp because he's, there's no data in South America where he's at. And we're like, okay, like we're gonna try this again. And we back got back together, went on a couples retreat, like renewed our vows, made a sacred covenant. Because when we got married, I was 20 and 21. I was 20, he was
Mm-hmm.
21. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what we were doing. Like I didn't realize your brain doesn't stop developing until your mid-20s. And this was long before I reactivated my psychic gifts because I had pushed it down. So all we knew was, oh, Nicole's really sensitive, Nicole's really anxious, Nicole's really depressed, Nicole has a lot of health issues. That's all we knew.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
weren't making the connection.
Right.
And so it's like I came back and I was like, hey, like this is the thing and this is what's been happening and I need to know if you're on board. And he's like doesn't understand it, like kind of uncomfortable with it. And it's like, I don't know, like I'm on the fence. I'm like, well, let's just see. But meanwhile, it's interesting like how things unfolded. So then the COVID happens and I'm like, oh, here it is, the thing I predicted, right? And I was supposed to go on a trip to South America, not South America, that was my husband. I was supposed to go to India. And the week of my trip, COVID was hitting India. So they canceled my trip. And that was actually the week that we ended up conceiving our daughter. So if I had
Oh.
gone, I wouldn't have had her. So all this stuff is
Mm-hmm.
unfolding. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this was again several years ago. And it's interesting how things have been progressing. So when I was growing up, I went to church my whole life. I grew up in the church and I got to be about 16 and I was questioning things, but in that upbringing, you don't question, right? If you question,
Mm-hmm.
it's like there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
Then I got to be 18. I met my husband when I was 18. We didn't go to church. We were in college. In college, that's not really a thing. You don't really go to church. And then we got to be out of college. We started going back to church. I actually credit church to helping me to quit my job, which was the soul sucking job that like gave
Mm-hmm.
me the panic attack. So I credit
Mm-hmm.
that to my experience in church. Then COVID happened as I was stepping into my psychic gifts and abilities. And we didn't go to church because church wasn't open. So I'm
Oh,
in this sort of like incubator, developing, learning,
right.
growing.
Right.
We moved to Texas where the laws here are a lot more relaxed. We brought our 2-month-old daughter, and then we had a son. And then it gets to be like 2023, and we're like, oh, we haven't been to church in 3 years. I'm a completely different person now, completely different person. And I was so scared. I was so scared to step back into church because there's this real fear of like, oh, like if I'm a psychic empath, if I'm a quantum energy healer, if I'm what some people would call a witch, like if I step into church, they're gonna ostracize me.
Right.
They're gonna excommunicate me. I'm gonna get punished. I'm gonna get killed. I was like so afraid. And I resisted it for a long time. My husband's like, hey, like, when are we going to go back? I'm like, oh, I'm making excuses. Oh, the baby's little. Oh, I'm pregnant again. Like, oh, now this baby's little. Like, wow. Like,
Right. Right.
all
Right. Excuse,
and
excuse, excuse.
excuse. And finally, Spirit's like, actually, you need to go back, like, now. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
like, why? And I'm the one that like talks back, like, why do I have to go back? Right. And it said there's this conversation you're supposed to have there. And if you don't have this conversation, you're actually not going to move forward in your life. I'm like,
Ooh,
oh man, right?
that's
Like I know
that's a big message.
I get like the big downloads, right? Like I
Yeah.
get like the big ones. So I go back to church and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm like, okay, like when's this conversation? When's this conversation? And then one of the Bible school leaders she friend requests me on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, she saw my stuff. I know it because it's all right. I have a public profile. It's right on there.
Uh-huh.
I thought she saw my stuff, and I kind of sit on her friend request for a few days, pretending I didn't see it. Finally, I accept it. Once I've accepted it, she then church asked me if I want to go to coffee, and I'm like, oh, she wants to talk to me about my Facebook. I know it. I feel it. And my human's like, I do not want to go to coffee, and spirit's like, you're going to coffee, and I was like, okay. So
Internal battle.
and then at the last minute, she's like, by the way, I'm bringing one of the other girls from Bible study. And I'm like, they're going to interrogate me. I was like, oh, great. So I go to coffee, and sure enough, she buys me a little coffee and a pastry. That's nice. Right. And then I sit down, and it's her and this other woman. She's like, okay, like, I want to talk to you about your Facebook profile. Oh,
You're right.
and she's like, I'm deeply concerned about what you're doing, and it seems like you're on a dark path and you're leading people astray. I'm like, oh dear, like you have no idea what I'm doing.
Right.
You don't know
Right.
what I do. You have so many misconceptions about what I do. And I said, look, I don't feel like I should have to defend myself. I said, but I'm also an open book, and I don't have anything to hide. So if you're willing to approach this with an open mind, not that you have to agree, but if you're willing to approach it with an open mind and actually hear me out and what I have to say, then I'm happy to share. And so we had a 90-minute conversation.
Wow.
A 90-minute conversation about my beliefs and my theology and why I'm there at the church, and like, why would I bring my kids to a church if I like believe in crystals and all this other stuff? And
Mm-hmm.
in her mind, it's like, okay, you have the Bible as the only source of truth, and that's it. And like in my mind, I'm like, well, why would you limit God to just like one source that actually was like not manipulated, but
Right.
curated?
Right. Right.
Curated.
Right.
I said, God is so much bigger than that. And she's like, you can't blend Christ consciousness in the cosmos. And I was like, actually, that's why I'm here. And I realized, I said, this was the conversation. This was
You were
it.
supposed to have.
This was
Yes.
the conversation I was supposed to have. And so eventually I needed to leave because Raleigh needed the car to go to some other appointment. But I get in the car, and I actually didn't, I was so proud of myself. I didn't cry the whole conversation because part of me would have been like, oh my God, these people are talking to me. But it wasn't it. I was like, stood my ground, stood in my power, spoke my truth, right? I get in the car, and I get about halfway home. It's a 10-minute drive. I get about 5 minutes into the drive, and I start bawling, like just like all this karmic relief. It felt like chains breaking because I realized 200 years ago, I would have been burned at the stake
Yes.
for being
Yes.
who I was.
Yes.
And I just felt like I'm the healer, like not just for me, but like for my whole family, for
Mm-hmm.
for my mom who has her own fears and witch
Mm-hmm.
wounds regarding like her power and hiding herself and her truth, and for her mom and her mom and her mom. And then I see like my daughter now, who's almost 3, coming into her gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And I share this because there's been you were asking the question, like, well, how does your family feel about it?
Right.
My husband and I are still having conversations about this, because even before this conversation with the women from church, when we started going back to church back, I think it was in March or April of this year, he was like, how do you reconcile your spiritual practice with church? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like, it's the same. There's just, we use different terms. So prayer and meditation, right? Prayer is the asking, meditation is the receiving of answers.
Mm-hmm.
Magic and miracles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things you can't explain. They just appear out of thin air, right?
Right.
Manifestation is answer to prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no difference. And that's what I'm trying to get people to see. And when I came out of this conversation, I was so lit up. I was so on fire. It was actually the catalyst for me joining the Facebook group, where I think is where we met. And I like to play little games with Spirit. So Spirit said, okay, it's time to get on podcasts and have conversations about what you just talked about, so that you can show people these are not two mutually exclusive worlds, but actually they're the same. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm supposed to be on podcasts, how do you expect me to find hosts? Because I don't have a podcast. So I'm like, how am I
Mm-hmm.
supposed to find these people? They said, we'll show you. So they showed me this Facebook group. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But if you're really serious about this, I need you to show me again tomorrow. Show me in the next 24 hours, the same group.
Mm-hmm.
And the chances of it showing you the same group twice is like very slim. And the next day it showed me the group again. So I'm like, okay, this is it. So I think this happened a few months ago. Now it's been a few months, but I think I've been on 45 something different podcasts since
Oh my
then
goodness.
in the past 2, 3
Spirit
months.
has you busy.
Busy, and it's slowing down now. So Spirit's like, okay, now you're done. You've done the thing. And I'm like, okay, great. Yeah. So
Hmm.
like 40 something different podcasts and a dozen different summits, online summits. So
Wow.
but here's the thing is like as I'm growing, right? And on the one hand, it's like there was this feeling of if I go all in on this path, am I going to outgrow my partner? Am I going
Mm,
to disappoint my mom? And it's like, maybe, but also like, are you going to keep hiding yourself just because it makes other people uncomfortable?
right.
Yeah. And
Right.
we get to, this happened actually just a couple weeks ago where I was hosting a retreat, and it was the first retreat where both men and women were invited because historically I've only hosted women's only events.
Hmm.
And I knew that this retreat needed to happen. There was some sort of healing that needed to happen between me and my husband and the husbands of the other women too. Like something needed to happen here. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I do this, it's either going to make or break my relationship, right? And we're getting into the retreat. It's the morning of the retreat. It's the morning of the retreat. And my husband goes like, I have to tell you that I haven't been very strong in my faith and I feel like I need to pray more. And like, actually, I think that what you do is like wrong, like morally wrong. And I'm like, oh,
Oh,
this is a
wow.
bomb. This is a bomb right before my event that I'm supposed to drive to in like 2 hours. I was like, okay, like, let's unpack this because, first of all, I don't think you really know what I do because you haven't seen what I do. And that's why you're invited to the retreat is to actually see what I do.
Hmm.
And yeah, he went to the retreat. He ended up getting sick because I got sick the day before the retreat, and I guess whatever I had I gave to him, but ironically no one else got sick. I think the sickness may have manifested as a way for him not to actually see what I was doing so that he could
Uh-huh.
like, what I said, don't
Right.
ask, don't tell, like just have a
Right.
butterfly, not actually.
Right. Right. Right.
But there was so much healing happening at this event. Like people were releasing like chronic illness and like abuse from childhood and things in their marriages, and like so much was happening, and he's over there asleep because he's sick, right? And we get out of the event and there were some really tough conversations of like
Sure.
actually, him saying, I don't know if I'm still in love with you because of this path. Like, I'm worried if you keep going on this path, like how weird is it gonna get? And I'm like, I don't know. And we set some boundaries and drew some lines. But yeah, like this is a very long answer to your question is
No.
they don't understand.
Right.
They don't approve, but also that doesn't change anything
Hmm.
because I hid who I was for 30 years.
Right.
Right? If you think from
Hmm.
birth to when I came into
Sure.
my psychic reawakening, and I'm not going to hide anymore.
Hmm.
And if that makes other people uncomfortable or they like don't want to be around me or they, aren't in love with me anymore, like I
Hmm.
like sorry, but also not sorry.
You're actually learning that lesson quite early in life because I know a lot of people, uh, it's not until they get into their 50s, 60s, and 70s come to that realization that if you don't like me, that's okay. I don't need you in my life. I just need the people that I know love and support me. And usually that does not happen until later on in a woman's life. So congratulations for you to you for figuring that out at this point in your life, because it will make
Mm.
things much easier with that realization. And I wish that myself and many of my friends the same thing, that we would have come to that realization, because you work so hard because you want everybody to like you, or change yourself so they will like you. And it's like, this is me, that I'm not, for better or worse, this is me, take me as I am, sort of thing, because there's plenty of people that do love and support you, that you're wasting so much time and energy on people that when it really comes down to it, they're not going to love or respect or like you no matter what you do or whatever you change. So good on you for figuring that out.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
So
that
the energy we're sitting in now is, we have two small kids, and my daughter, who's just barely going to be 3 in December, she's already showing signs of abilities, and he's asked for
mm,
me not to encourage that. I'm like, I don't know how not to, because if she has it, she has it.
right.
He says, I'm not ready for it. I'm like, you may not be ready for it, but she's definitely ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're asking me not to like pour it on her and just leave that as like an open door for her to explore, I'm also going to ask you not to discourage it either, and not to make her feel like she's crazy or there's something wrong with her in the way that I was made to feel growing up. Like
Exactly.
that's where I
You
drew
don't
the
you don't
line.
want to repeat history again.
No, no, yeah.
Right.
And then and this is the conversations we have to have with, like, say his mother and also my mother, is they're both devout Christians, which is great for them. That's a beautiful path. And I have no problem with that. Like, we still take our kids to church. But it's that I don't want for my kids, specifically my daughter, to feel that there's something wrong with them
Right.
because of this gift that they've been given.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm. When you were talking earlier about how a lot, especially Christian people, and I'm a Christian myself, but I have never felt this way. But growing up in the church, when they talk about psychic abilities and that sort of thing, it automatically human human interpretation, I guess I should say, says that those things are sinful. And there was a friend of mine, I was in college, and she said, Patty, I'm going to go have my tarot cards read. Would you like to go along? And right away, I mean, it was like red lights flashing because of how I had been raised and taught that, oh my gosh, that's sinful, that's devil worshiping, blah, blah, blah. But there was still something inside that said, what's it going to hurt to watch? I said, well, I don't want to have my cards read, but sure, I'll go. And because I was curious, I mean, sure, I'll go see what this is all about. And so we go up to see this gentleman. And one of the first things that I notice is that he does not ask her for any payment. And he makes the comment that he believes that his psychic abilities are a God-given gift. And if she chose to pay him anything after the reading, that was strictly up to her. But because it was a gift from God, he did not charge people. So right away, before she's even getting this reading, I'm like, well, that's different from what I was taught, or what I've been told. And so as he is doing her reading, um, I know enough about her that I'm thinking, now this is like in the 80s. So this is before social media. So it's not like he could get online to learn all these things about her. And as he is reading her cards, I'm just like, you got to be kidding me, and even she's just like, wow. And she had been to this guy before several other times throughout the years. And I'm just floored with what he is saying. And so when her reading gets done, she turns to me and she says, do you want him to do your reading? And there was something inside of me that said, and out loud, I almost surprised myself, and I go, yeah, I would like that. I was not expecting that at all. And so I sit there and he's doing my cards. Now, once again, I've never met this man. This is before, like you said, this is the early 80s. So there's not the internet and all of the other things that we have today to be able to check things. And the things that this gentleman said and the things that he had told me about myself, I I was I it, I was shocked. I was amazed. I was intrigued. I I could not believe it. And I will say, in that moment of time, it changed my view on all of that. And so I keep myself open to it because, as you have said before, my greater source, or my universal source, I know as God. But what I have learned throughout the years is, um, my God is not the only God that's out there. I'm not judge and jury. And so what I am to learn when I am here on this earth is to explore and learn and keep an open mind to everything. because I don't believe that there is any one way to your greater source, whatever that may be. So I'm so excited to have you on this episode today, because I think every single person, if they really truly were honest with themselves, as you kind of mentioned throughout this time together, I think we all have a certain level of psychic ability.
Exactly.
And if we're open to it, that could change a lot of things for us, correct?
Exactly.
That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Because, when you talk about the other thing too, is not just being an empath, but I think there's a lot of people at one point or another, they do, if they really keyed into it, they would feel a power or a source or energy or whatever you want to call it in a certain moment, time, and space. I just don't think we know what it is or what to do with it, because we never explored what that truly means.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this conversation a lot because so much of organized religion has taught us that the power is something out there outside of ourselves. But there's no separation between us and the divine. The veil has been torn. And so, like, when we talk about the power being within, it's because there's no separation. Like, we are the power. We have the power because we allow it to flow through us. And so if we look at it like from the Christian perspective, we talk about spirit, it's the Holy Spirit, right? We sometimes say like, oh, like God doesn't talk to me. It's like, well, are you actually listening? Like, are you actually opening up and letting that in? Are you allowing God,
Right.
spirit, source,
Yes.
to speak to you? Are you allowing it to move through you?
Ooh. Well, I know a friend of mine, her sister had just passed away a week ago, and she was at her bedside. And she said, they were anticipating her sister passing away at any moment. And she said, for whatever reason, all of a sudden, her hands kind of outstretched across her sister's body. And she said she felt this energy or power or something. It was just like automatic. Her hands just started going. And the hospice worker said, do you feel an energy happening? And she said, yes, I do. And right then her sister passed away. And just sitting and talking with my friend and having her describe that, it gave me goosebumps, because she was so in tuned at that moment in time and making such a direct connection with her sister that she was able, I feel, and she feels the same thing, of feeling her sister's spirit, her soul leave at that moment in time. And she feels it is such a gift that she was given that by her sister.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible.
It really is. Thank you for sharing that.
And I really truly think that all of us, if we really got in touch with our feelings, we would all know that in some way, shape, or form we have empathic abilities. I just don't think that a lot of us know to put that type of term or definition to it. People go, oh, well, my gut was telling me. Well, I think that's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Same thing. Yeah. And that's the thing, is if psychic doesn't resonate with you, don't use it. If empath doesn't resonate with you, don't use it. Like, there's so many other terms, or if you just don't want to use the label at all, that's fine. But just realize that you do know. That's like my number one pet peeve is, I don't know. I don't know. Like, you do know. It's just that the answer is not what you were expecting, or the answer is something
Is what you want?
contrary to what you want. Or, I talk about, like, we are the channel, right? If you think about you being a sort of radio channel and you're tuning into what's for your greatest good and highest potential, or God, source, universe, the divine, you're tuning your radio. And then there's all these other energies or entities that are speaking into your life. So your parents and what they believe, and your past, and your partner, and your kids, and the TV and the news and the media and the social media and religion and school systems and politics and your country's beliefs and all this stuff. It's like, okay, like, imagine turning on your computer and your phone and your garbage disposal and the shower and the dishwasher and the washing machine and the dryer. Like, how well do you actually think you're going to hear?
Yeah.
Hear yourself think, let
Yes.
alone hear from God.
Right. Yes. So we
Yeah,
really need to take those moments and time every single day to be quiet and listen.
exactly.
Wow. That is, once again, powerful information. I mean, very enlightening as well. Um, what would you say is the very best advice that you've ever been given by anyone?
The first the first thing that comes to mind is maybe not appropriate. I don't know if we're allowed to cuss on this show, but
You go for it. Whatever you need to say.
it's actually a meme. There's a fake commercial for this pill called Fuck 'em all. And it's like when when you feel like you're tuning into other people's opinions, expectations, projections, perceptions, it's like, have you taken your daily dose of fuck 'em all? Because it doesn't really matter what anyone else says or does or thinks. If you want to go look it up on YouTube, it's a funny little commercial. But
But it's so true, right? It's bringing
yeah,
humor to truth.
yes. Yeah.
Wow. I like that. That's some pretty good advice. Um, when there are people that as I refer to as yuck your wow. And I mean what your psychic abilities, that is a wow for you. That is how that has brought you through life. When people yuck your wow, how do you respond to them?
I mean, I get this almost daily with my husband, but um I gotta let it go. Like their journey is their journey. And if they don't see or believe in what I believe, I just trust that they'll have eyes to see and ears to hear when they're ready for it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. What would you say that you're passionate about personally and professionally?
Oh, definitely helping people to discover their passion and purpose and bringing
Mm,
that to life. Yeah.
very good. And what is your purpose personally and professionally?
Oh yeah. So this I got when I was telling you about like being in the shower and like don't stop, there's purpose in the pain. I got my mission statement at that time too. So it was to become the best version of myself, to empower others to become the best version of themselves.
Mm, very good. What would you say is your superpower?
Definitely the psychic intuition. Yeah. Also, I have a knack for synthesizing information. So what I just shared with you is like psychic school in a nutshell. And psychic school is also a synthesization of all this other stuff that I learned of years and years of practice. So I have this ability to like take all the things and like distill it down and drill it down into something very simple and tangible.
That's a superpower for sure. Yes. How are you living your best life, or as I like to say, living your best dash?
Ooh, I'm living my best dad. It's a game, like the game of life. It's waking up each day and tuning in and asking the question of how am I being called to serve? How am I
Mm-hmm.
being called to serve? And I just take it day by day, week by week, month by month. Like I don't have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan. It's living in
Mm-hmm.
the moment, being completely mindful and present in the here and now.
Excellent. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, besides taking your daily dose. It's just knowing and believing that you already have the answers. The answers are inside of you. It's just a matter of whether or not you're listening and taking it a step further, taking that inspired idea into an aligned action moving forward.
Excellent. And a very nice way to end our podcast time together. Thank you so much, Nicole, for being here today. I I have truly found this to be enlightening on so many levels, and it was the perfect timing for me to have you as my guest. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I know that there's going to be people that once they hear this podcast, they're going to like, I need to get in touch with Nicole. I need to talk with her. So how can people connect with you?
Yes, please do. So you can find me online. My website is oracleacademy.com. It's a little play on words, aura as in, your auric field,
Mhm.
and then also oracle. So it's AURACLE academy.com. If you put a little slash quiz, that'll take you to a little 2-minute quiz that'll show you your spiritual superpower if you want to find that out. And then you can also find me online. I'm on Instagram as Nicole.Starbuck. That's Nicole, little dot in the middle, followed by my last name, like the coffee, but without the S at the end. And then I also have a free Facebook group called The Conscious Collective.
Excellent. So, if in case you didn't catch all of that, don't get panic stricken here, because if you go to the description for the podcast, whether you're watching it right now or on YouTube or on one of the 10 podcast platforms, go to the description and you will see those links in the description. So all you have to do is go to it, click on it, and it will take you directly to Nicole so you can get in touch with her. Thank you once again, Nicole. This has been absolutely wonderful. And I just appreciate your openness, your truthfulness, and just everything about you. So once again, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
And for all of you out there listening, remember to subscribe and follow this podcast. And I also invite you to bring your friends and family along. Tell them about it as well, because I know each and every one of you out there, you grow and you expand from each one of the guests on this podcast. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that 5-star rating. And I wouldn't mind at all if you wrote a review as well. I enjoy your comments. That would really be awesome. Don't forget to check out my website at www.pathwayswithpatty.org and sign up for a free Zoom chat with me, or to get my Pathway to a New Beginning roadmap. So until we meet again, continue to live your best dash and know that life's an adventure, and I want you to enjoy the journey, because your life matters. Thank you for joining us today, and may God bless you all.